Pringle. And now we can have some discussion. Before we get deep into our discussion, I'd like to take the opportunity to turn the floor over to our Administrator Roy, who's done some updates on the budgets from there's usually some feedback on this. I'd like to take the opportunity to turn the floor to our Administrator Roy. We've been working through it. Updates on the budgets. There's usually some feedback on this. We've been working through it. Few technical difficulties. Welcome back, everyone. And just before we start, I'd like to turn the floor over to our CAO, Administrator Roy, so he can give us an update on, or speak to his updated report to council on our 5-year financial plan. Administrator Roy, floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Your Worship. Basically, through the process so far, we've had our 2 introductory meetings, one for the operating, one for the projects, and then we had an open house for the public. At this point, we're just coming back, just really starting to the discussion. Work has been done to refine the budget a bit further as new information came in or other things were noted. Such as our 1% numbers were on utilities was confirmed. There was a few little things. And then one major adjustment that we adjusted for. The budget still does show 125,000. That's one of the questions for councils. What's going to be the direction on that? And the really what it comes down to right now is just we need to determine what is the revenue we want to bring in. Allocation is not necessarily a concern at this point. That will be dealt with at the tax rate. But that right now is just what is the revenue. If the revenue does not adjust for that 125, then it's pretty straightforward for the tax rate one. But that's, again, depends on the decision of council. Sorry, just getting the item open on my. The other thing, I did put a list in there of the memberships that council have. And just if council is in agreement with all those items, then when they do come up throughout the budget year, then we'll just proceed with them instead of having them come back to say, okay, yes, basically saying, let's address it now. If these are what you're okay with, we'll just move forward as we go through the year. So the base of the memberships in there are the AVICC, UBCM, FCM, the Legion ad, the business card ad that we do, and the Remembrance Day, which we did discuss for not too long ago on that one. But at that time I said we could just introduce into the budget in one shot, and then council can make the decision each year on the list of items. Did make some of the other input changes that council had requested, such as the funding of the digital sign coming out of the code restart. While I was at it, a light went on, and I also added the server and the copier to be funded by that because they're both IT stuff, and that's one of the streams in that allowable items. So that takes it out of having to fund it out of our general capital reserve. They were big ticket items, but every little bit helps. The graphs that I did include the COVID restart graph into the charts so that council could see that. As noted, there was a duplication of one of the projects that's been removed. And really, at this time, just turn it back to council so council can have their discussions and provide direction.
Just for clarification on your presentation there, Mr. Roy, use the $125,000 that you alluded to. That's not reflected in your operating budget summary 5 years under our taxation. That's something that's
It is
pulled
in,
out of it.
no, it is not pulled out. If we pulled that out or council decides on a different level, then the bottom line will, deficit will increase.
So, okay, so just to clarify, unless we raised the taxes to generate that $125,000, then the balance that I see here at the end of 2025, 130,438, we'd add $125,000 onto that.
Onto that as would increase the deficit, correct?
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, sir. Councillors, before I give it to you, do you mind if I just, we talk to Director of Operations Doxy? Is he online?
Yes,
Director of Operations Doxy, welcome.
thank you. Hi.
Just before we get started with our questions, I was wondering if you might have anything that you want to share with council before we really get going here. On the reports.
Nothing special at this time. I think the best would be maybe as we go through, if there's a specific area or question, we can maybe address it area by area.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much. Councillors. Anyone have any questions that you'd like to address to the administrator or to Director of Operations? Councillor Pickard.
Thank you through the chair.
Sure.
Back to formal. And I guess it would be to the administrator. Well, first of all, thanks for the putting it all together and the reviews and implementing the changes and the requests in the last few meetings. And then this is kind of a follow-up on Mayor Lott's question about the 125,000 that, you know, we seem to talk about all the time. And I'm just wondering, like, how long is that in our forecasted revenues, or how long are we gonna still talk about that? Because it wasn't a guarantee. No one in that industry made any specific details to that contract because it was so uncertain. And by 2025, the whole system and the whole industry was going to change anyway. So I'm just wondering how long we're going to look at seeing that as a lost operating revenue.
Well, it comes down to getting the long-term direction on how we want to address that. If we lose revenue on one hand, and if we didn't have surplus, then we would have had, our only alternative is to raise taxes. We're not a business, and we're not legislatively, we're not allowed to have a deficit unless you have a surplus that can offset it. So at some point, we have to address the elephant in the room. We were working on that up until that 120 that we lost that revenue, and that set us back. If you remember, if anybody was here, well, most of you were probably quite a few years now, our tax rate increases were 2-3%. But that wasn't dealing with the position that we're in with the huge deficit. The previous council went up to about 6%, trying to start narrowing that gap. This council increased it to the 8.9 to narrow it down, and they targeted basically your term. They, or I guess you, not they, target your term for that. Now we took a loss on the user fee side, the non-tax side. Our only other side to address that shortfall is on the tax side. So the question back to council is, how did you want to proceed with that? Is it a lump sum? Is it extending the phase in or doing a phase in? Those are questions for council to provide that direction. All of them are options. If it is what council's desire is as a way forward to how do we address the additional loss that we now took that set us back.
Thank you, CAO Roy. Councillor Pickard, does that answer your question?
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, thanks for the information. And I understand that that was revenue that we had coming in and that we can't have a deficit. So we need to address that somewhere. But like in the operating budget in the 5 years forecast, like, do we have that 125,000 in the 5 years going forward? Because,
Yes, once it's in there, it stays in there.
okay, but as a municipality and kind of knowing our industries and knowing what was happening in that industry, how could we expect that operating, that revenue to be the same in those next 5 years when that whole industry and the way that we made that revenue was completely changing? Like the closed containment, they don't even have the technology now to do closed containment systems. So there's no way that we would have had the exact same, about the same 250,000 for 2 years. Like we can't have that in our forecast.
And
now
I
put it on
appreciate
tax
that, but
papers.
that has been how we were budgeting and what our expectation was, and that has been our reality. Until that changes, then we would have to make adjustments. If we still had them coming across our dock and the revenue dropped, we would still have to find that revenue from our tax side then. If we lose on our user fees and everything that's non-tax, we're gonna have to make it up on our tax side. It has to come from somewhere. We can't just take a loss. The only reason we can do it right now, and we've been talking about for years, is we got that accumulated unrestricted surplus. Once that goes, we will be up on the wall where it's either shut down a service or jump the taxes hugely. So if we want to keep the services, then it's trying to pick away and chip away at getting that deficit down and manageable and turning things around so that we can absorb some of these things. When we lose something on the revenue side on the user fees and whatnot, we don't have that luxury to say, okay, well, we'll just take a little bit less that goes into reserves or something. We don't have that. We are in a deficit position with our budget. As we've cut things down quite a bit, as you can see in the numbers from what we projected last year. But at some point, a decision has to be made, and we're not going to have the luxury of our surplus if either major, like if we have to spend $2 million suddenly on a water line because we lost it, that's unrestricted surplus, and surplus it will be gone in one shot. So it's not a pretty picture that we're sitting in. We don't have that luxury. So you're going to say, well, we didn't have it, we can't project it, but everything we do is projection on the user fee side, unless we do everything 100% tax.
Councillor Pickard, subsequent?
Thanks for your comments. And yeah, it just seems like we have a responsibility as a municipality and to our residents. And if we have something in our operating revenue coming in, yes, nothing's guaranteed, but it's pretty guaranteed we're going to get our taxes next year at some level and some rate increase. And we did a contract with the municipality. It wasn't us as a council, and the administration was different, but the contract, we rely so heavily on it, and it's such a massive thing in our budget. And now that we have to look at taxpayers and kind of decide how to allocate it, I think it's one of the maybe, one of the mistakes we can look back on, that there was nothing even in that contract that said that they had to use that dock. We just said there was a price for 10 years. But if something's going to be such an important part of our budget, I guess it's a lesson going forward, and we have to figure out how to deal with it. But we should, that if something's guaranteed in our operating budget, that it should be in the contract that they're going to use it, or there's a minimum, or that they'll, stick with us for the service.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. That's a statement. Thank you. It's not a question. Any other questions that council might have? Or any other discussion you guys might want to have? None? Sure. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you to the chair. When we had our open house, it was great to see some people here. I thought there would have been more businesses. I was hoping to see more businesses because I was hoping we could work more collaboratively about what to do. I did hear from some people and people realize that our taxes, for what we want and for the way Gold River is, our taxes may have to go up and we may have to do something like that. And one person said to me, don't feel guilty. It's just the way the world is going. And I felt guilty. But the thing is, we have to also make sure that we have something for the future. And if for the next council, I don't want them to be in the same position as us, having to put up taxes so much more. I would like to see maybe something a bit more gradual. But I do see that maybe we will have to raise taxes for everyone. And that is something I didn't want to have to look at, but I do think we're with our aging infrastructure, something's gonna happen and we're gonna be really kicking ourselves if we use all of our unrestricted funds. So we're just so hard, it's so hard. And we're between a rock and a hard place, but I really appreciate that you've really laid it on the line tonight, CAO, because I think I needed to hear that. And I think we all needed to hear that it has to come from somewhere. And for a long time, Gold River has kind of maybe just sat back and let the world go around them. And now we have to kind of step up and really do some things we don't want to do. So that's just more of a, I guess, a statement of where my head is at about the whole thing. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sprinkle. I'll echo your sentiments because I spend a lot of time trying to keep my fingers on the pulse of the community. So I try and get out and meet people where they are. And the conversations that I have with people is that they feel very blessed to live in a community that has amenities that we enjoy. There's not many small communities anywhere in the world that have the legacy buildings and services that we have. And I think people that, majority of people that here are living here are, want to maintain the character of our community, want to maintain their quality of life that we have, want to maintain our services. You know, there might have to be some adjustments there, but I see there's a certain tolerance for acknowledgement that they would be willing to pay higher levels of taxes than maybe the industry standard out there in the region in order to maintain the quality of life that we have right now, rather than going the route that we turn ourselves into a community that's sustainable and financially viable, but doesn't have a pool or doesn't have an arena or doesn't have a golf course or doesn't have parks or doesn't have garbage service like we have, right? Or any of the amenities we have. So I think there is an acknowledgement there, but I also, on the other hand, there's a threshold. And I've recognized that there's a threshold. There's certain dynamics in our community that you can't deny. One is that we are, for most intents and purposes, a predominantly gentrified community where I think our average age is much higher than it was during the golden years when we had lots of folks here working and making lots of money. And a lot of them are on fixed incomes and they're willing to dig a little bit deeper, but you know, they don't have the capacity to generate a lot more revenue for themselves to compensate for increased costs, and everything's going up. So there's a certain threshold that I think that that you're gonna have to look at. So when I sat here and deliberated, and I did a lot because, you know, during the last meeting when we were here, as I said, you know, I'm hearing all these different and diverse opinions and they're great. I love to hear them. And, but I wasn't too sure what the solution is. So I kind of sat around and thought it out for a bit. And I kind of came to some ideas that I shared with you guys on an email that I'm going to be going over tonight, but I want to give you guys the floor first to hear what your thoughts are. But they kind of blend a lot of the ideas that I heard from the meetings that we've had so far. So I do believe that people value our community. They want to maintain the character of our community, quality of life in our community, and they're willing to pay a bit more, but there is a threshold and it have to be spread over a period of time. That's kind of what I got. And I think there's a tolerance for that. And I'm pretty sure if we took that route, as we looked at it, we won't have that gallery filled up with angry taxpayers and a gallows set up the front and people having to worry about getting beat up before they get into council meetings. So I think that, you know, if we kind of follow those principles. And also look at the fact that we might have to deficit fund a little bit longer to give ourselves or buy ourselves some time. And that's the gift that we got from our predecessors who worked hard in order to staff so that we'd have an opportunity to maybe have a little bit more time to try and turn this thing around. So we do have the unrestricted reserves that we can draw from. We have restricted reserves that we can draw from. We have surpluses. Those surpluses are there, excuse me. And then we have our reserve funds. So there's money available. And if you're talking like 125,000, we're really not talking about 125,000 if we're talking about what we finance, because the administrators told us that we've got 130,000 deficit in 2025 with all the work that he's done to get it there. But then you have to add the 125,000 onto that. So it's about 255,000. It's got to come from somewhere. So it's going to come from our unrestricted surpluses, right? And then the same thing next year. So it's not just that 125, it's that whole number on the bottom when you add it up. And I remember when I was looking at last year's, it was something like 800,000 was a number, 800 something. And then Mr. Roy and his team went to work and managed to find about 536, I think the number's close, $536,000 in savings and efficiencies that we were able to reduce from the budget. And I talked to him a little bit more about some more because 536,000 is amazing, but if you look at it, we need another 400,000 basically on top of 125,000 on top of that. So 250,000 on top of that, right? So he's gone, he looked at the Parks and Recreation and Culture, and they've come back with some savings there also, and maintaining our service levels like we wanted to do, not laying off any of our employees like we wanted to do, still providing the service in our communities. So yeah, but maybe there's some more that we need to do or that we can do. We're asking a lot, but they're extraordinary times. So we got to come up with some extraordinary solutions. And I've shared some ideas with you, and after we go around the table and put some motions out there that people can think about whether they want to support or not support or provide alternate motions. Councillor Boston.
Thank you through the chair. And this might be more of a statement
Sure.
of comments that I've heard from some of our community members, our taxpayers. One of the things that was brought up to me is we do have a legacy buildings or recreation facilities. I guess you would call them legacy things that were infrastructure that was built in. And
during the golden years when there's lots of money.
Yeah.
That's when they're built. We're not building them
so
today.
the comment from some of our taxpayers that have talked to me are, well, there's only two ways to raise money. That's raise taxes or cut services. And like Mr. Roy, our administrator, has said, you can only do one or the other, and
Or both.
or both. Exactly. And that's what I was going to comment. We could do both. And looking through the report and the proposed items here. Anyways, so I guess some of the sentiment from some of the community members has been a little different than what to Councillor Pringle and Mayor Lott. Some of them were like, well, we really can't afford to pay a lot more in taxes, so we need to cut services. You guys really need to get hard of cutting services. And when pushed came to shove, when I asked, well, tell us what you want us to do. And some of the things were quite painful for me to hear. And I don't enjoy the fact, but I think we were all elected to really have these hard struggles on these budgets. But I will just say what some of the community members have said to me. How in the world does other communities that are smaller than us with less taxes keep their recreation facilities open? And I said, I really don't know. I said, maybe the province kicked in or somebody kicked in. Well, we need to look at that. I said, well, that's thinking outside the box, because I said, I don't want to see our recreation facilities closed down. Other things were, other comments were, we really want to have secure freshwater, wastewater, garbage pickup, and the awesome job that our staff does maintaining what they do within our village proper. Those are the key things, and that's what they're happy paying taxes for. So it's a conundrum, but I think there's some solutions out there. But that was just input that I was receiving back. Not all of it positive. So, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't like the idea of having to cut services because I don't want to see staff laid off. And I don't think that's the way to do it. So, yeah, we have a challenge in front of us, but I think we're up for the challenge. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fossil. Yeah, one of the purposes of having five of us sit around this table is, in our governance model, is that we get diverse points of view from different perspectives that we see in the community. Like I'm not seeing the same thing that you do, or same thing that anyone else here probably thinks. But if we all get together and we find that there's some commonality, that allows us to go forward in harmony. But I do recognize that that there are people in the community that can live without a golf course. They can live without a swimming pool. They can live without an arena. They don't use any of those. They don't want to pay for those. They don't want those on their taxes. They also don't have kids going to school. They don't want to pay any school taxes. They don't use our healthcare system because they're in good shape or they're in good health. They've taken good care of themselves. They don't want to pay any taxes on their health. So I understand those arguments and yeah, and I appreciate them. And a lot of people just can't afford, to be in, or just not in a position where they can afford to pay a heck of a lot more taxes. So, yeah, I don't discount what you're saying, but I've dealt with a lot of conversations in the community. I'm finding that there's more people that are interested in looking at paying a little bit more in order to maintain the character of our community, the services that we have, and the facilities that we have, and maintain our quality of life. So that's what I'm bringing forth here this evening. But I'm not discounting the fact that there's a lot of people in our town that simply don't want to pay for things that they're not using, or they don't want to pay taxes on things that that they don't feel they get any value from. Councilor Rimmer.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot of things that I mean, we've got a lot of ideas on the table here, and really it comes down to call it a holistic approach. So I mean, first and foremost, I think that $125,000 needs to get pulled from our budget because that ship has sailed, and now it's up to us to try and make that up at least partially. I don't know that fully is necessarily something we're going to be able to achieve. But at least partially recoup some of that cost of our deficits over the next 3 years, and or I guess if you include the 125 we're pulling out over 4 years. It's reflected in our budget, and we can reduce the hurt on the village's finances as much as we can. Unfortunately, I think that will come down to pulling from our reserves, partially and ideally not fully, because once that money is gone, it's gone. So yeah, we've got to explore higher taxes than the 8.9% we agreed upon when we didn't have this extra problem we are facing today, and find where that threshold is, because we do have all these services that we do want to continue to maintain. We want to keep that the livability of our community as high as possible. It's just a matter of where are we going to get the funds from, and it's not going to be from one place. It's going to be a holistic approach. We're going to find some here, some there. Hopefully we can find some more cuts, but it can't all be from one place.
Thank you, Councilor Rimmer. Councilor Pickering.
Thank you through the chair. Thanks for everyone's comments and input. It's all really great, and I really appreciate Councillor Waymeier's thoughts that it's going to be a holistic approach, and it's not going to be one massive gouge to some group or some group of individuals, that it's going to be holistic. And I also appreciate Councillor Fossen's comments that it is really difficult and challenging, and some of the stuff that you hear in citizens' opinions is really challenging, but we are up for it. And you know, when we're kind of thinking about these services and these legacy things that we've inherited and that we do appreciate and that make our town livable and that really contribute to mental health, physical health, social health, like say our pool, I think we do have to think outside the box. And I think we really have to think, how do we keep it running? And
Yes.
you know, we've been like very, very collaborative and supportive of MFN and wanting to work with them, and every proposal that came in, and development permit and development variance permit and putting signs up, we wanted to, but we've suggested it before, but I don't know, have we ever approached them and said like, look, we're in a dire financial situation with the village. We want to keep this operational. Yes, they haven't contributed to operating costs in the past, but it's such an important facility for us, for residents. Our kids all know how to swim in the rivers in the summer, that, you know, when the pool's closed May to September and they're all by rivers. It's such an integral part of the community. Have we thought of approaching them to maybe partner? And there is a massive amount of funding, as Mr. Barry said, like, where's the money? It's reconciliation, it's funding for First Nations and Indigenous partnerships and Indigenous-led initiatives. Like, you know, if we make that point that that's a partnership and it's really, really beneficial to our senior populations, to people who just had surgery, to our kids, like why don't we try that? Why don't we just try? You know, this is a holistic thing, and there's going to be a lot of places that we can look. And the easier thing is just increasing taxes, but there's, I think, other creative options that we can look at that will strengthen our relationships, develop partnerships, and keep the longevity of the town, which now is more intertwined with MFN, with our shared buildings in town. And I think just, you know, there's other avenues that we can look at.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Did you have any ideas on how you wanted to do that if we shoot that?
Thank you through the chair.
Because to my knowledge, this council has never made any overtures, or any previous councils made overtures to the Mount Mission First Nations or New Channel Tribal Council to have them fund any operations within the village of Gold River, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, I do have a suggestion. Thank you through the chair. And I suggested maybe about a year ago that we start a working group with MFN that Mr. Barry also suggested would be a good idea. So regular meetings. So you have that relationship, like working group once a month, and you have the relationship, and you know, the needs of the communities. We're so linked together, but we don't meet that much council to council, and even working group wise.
Not at the political level.
No, and you know, TASIS does once a month, so it's possible, but we just have to bridge the gap and build the initiative. And once you have that rapport, you know, we've received proposals from them, like, why wouldn't we be able to put something together and say, look, like, would you guys have any access to any funding that we could keep this running, take some burden off our taxpayers, and keep this really important facility for both of our communities, for our whole big community going.
So I hear two things. I hear saying that we should have regular meetings with Mount Mission of the First Nations. It's a reciprocal arrangement, so we could reach out to them and ask them if they wanted to have meetings on a regular basis. I wouldn't have any opposition to meeting quarterly with them, say, and have regular meetings. How does the rest of the council feel about that possibility? Because we'd have to direct our staff to make the overture. So would you be prepared to make that overture? Your discussions with their administrator, with the czar, can we talk to them informally about having quarterly meetings, CAO, Roy?
Yes, your worship, and as council recalls too, we do have the 3 communities that also are going to be starting the process of meeting quarterly too, so. And we also do have at the staff level now a group going between the 3 communities on economic development discussions.
Great. So can we just reach out to them, see if they want to have those political meetings, at political level meetings between the chiefs and the council on like quarterly?
Yeah, I will be
Thank you,
meeting
sir.
with them shortly.
And then we could bring your issue up on one of our agendas then with them. Okay. Does someone have their hand up? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Councillor Pringle?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did Councillor Raymar, were you wanting to speak? Okay. All good. Let's talk about making some decisions then. So making motions within our motion there, Mr. Roy? Like if we want to make a decision on, let's say, our taxation levels or the duration of the taxation levels that I suggested within the email that I sent you folks. We do that within this existing conversation here, or do we have to close out and then go into that stuff?
How about retracting that motion and just going with except for information, so it can continue having conversations and introduce new motions.
Okay, so if we want to retract it, we need the person who moved a second to retract, and then we can go with just to receive for information.
That might be a bit easier, then we can close that off and then have discussions on the other.
So first,
Sorry, and just remember, this is not as formal as a council meeting, it's a committee of the whole. So we're not as held tight to those.
because, the
things,
reason
so-
I'm asking is because last time when Councillor Waymeyer and I had that discussion about moving one of the items a couple of years later, and that was the ventilation system in the fire hall, we did a motion within a motion, like we didn't pull ourselves out of
No,
that. We
but-
just did that, we moved.
That's why I
second.
kind of backtracked on myself. We're not as formal in this one.
So
So-
can we just carry on and then look at motions
Correct.
within motions then without? Great. I'm at the point where I think that we need to make a decision on what our taxation levels are over the next 5 years. There's a proposal on that we've currently got right now that talks about 8.9% over 2005, 2006, and 6% over 2007, 2008, and 2009. And in the discussion that I'm hearing right now is that those levels aren't going to be adequate enough in order to generate the revenues that we're hoping to maintain the character of our community, the quality of life in our community. And what I would like to do is I sent something around for you guys to consider. What I'd like to look at is rather than going 8.9, 8.9, 666, I'd like to make a movement that over the 5 years, we go 8.9 over the 5-year financial plan. That's probably about 2.9% above the last 3 years. Each one of the percentage roughly on general is about, if I remember correctly, about 11,000 on general, about 5 or 6 on the utilities, so maybe total 16,000. So rounded off to 50,000 a year. So what we have is a concept of progression. We're not hitting everybody with a huge one-off in order to generate it, but we're still generating money during the period of the 5 years. And we still are able to provide our services and hopefully not lay off or close facilities. So it would mean that we would be bumping up our taxes that we had considered. However, what we would be doing is that we would be keeping within a threshold that I think the community is tolerant of, because they're used to that 8.9%. And I don't think that we would have a lot of resistance, because I think that we enough people in the town that bought into that concept that they're willing to pay a bit more taxes in a progressive manner over a period of time to make up for this deficit that we're talking about. It doesn't make up the entire deficit, of course, it just takes some of it away. But I think it kind of speaks to a lot of what I've heard around the table and what I'm hearing in the community. And I'm thinking the way to address that is to look at setting our tax rate at 8.9% across all classes for the 5 years of the 5-year financial plan, rather than 8.9 in the first 2 years, 666 in the last 3. So anyways, it's not the ideal solution, but it sounds like a compromise that I believe that would address a lot of the conversation I've heard around this table in the community, and something that might be manageable for people to kind of finance. So anyway, I think we should get down to the business part of it. So I'm prepared to make the motion that that we move to approve an 8.9% increase over the next 5 years of the 5-year financial plan. Moved by Councillor Foster, second by Councillor Pringle, and they're welcome to have some discussion.
Your worship, Could, I'm assuming your intention is that replaces the 125 that has been, included in the budget this
Help
time.
address it, I would think.
Because what I'm getting at is, with the motion is to put remove the 125,000 out of the budget and go with
Yes,
8.9 for the,
yes, sir. So basically what you do is go back into your, I don't tell head of your business, but you go into your taxes or pull 125,000 out and now you're gonna have 8.9, 8.9, 8.9 across the board and then change those numbers.
yes, I'm just making sure your motion is that's the full intent, which is the long, also the means then next year I would not be asking about the 125 because this is now the long
Correct.
term address. So,
Correct.
okay,
There will be, and then the rest of that, I don't, we would be pulling out, like we said, the unrestricted reserves would be financing any of our deficits at the end of the year. Exactly like we did last year. And whatever that number turns into, hopefully it turns into a surplus like it has in previous years, if we're lucky. I think that's, I'm very confident with the staff that we have in our community and the employees, that even though we're projecting a deficit, we would still end up with a surplus because I'm confident that there's areas that there could still be some savings in, and there might be some revenue appreciation that is not completely fully factored in. So I think that's the motion. Anybody, any discussion? I'm not sure if I did. It's just a copy of what I sent you. Any discussion? Councillor Pringle.
To the chair,
Was it, oh, sorry, would you have yours hand up first? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Pringle, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'll lead it. I wasn't sure it came first. Go ahead, Councillor Pringle.
I like this. It doesn't feel as drastic as what I was thinking. So I appreciate it. And I think this would be more palatable for people to see that we are thinking about the future as well. And we're also thinking about our reserves. I just feel like we're gonna kick ourselves if we don't have those reserves. So as much as we can in there. So I appreciate this, and I think this is a good starting solution. If somebody else has something better, I'd like to hear that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Pickard.
Thank you through the chair, and thanks for Councillor Pringle, your thoughts, and thanks Mayor Lott for bringing this this kind of strategy and this compromise solution to our attention. And I think I agree with Councillor Pringle. I think it's palliative to residents. I think it's palliative to businesses. I think it shows some consistency and stability so businesses know what's coming, and to any potential businesses coming, it shows, you know, that we have responsibility to our citizens and keep our services the same. And we need to raise some taxes, but we are trying to create an environment that shows some stability, and the investments are steady, and, you know, we're trying to keep the tax rate the same through, you know, a 5-year plan. And if we kind of look back to our open house here, you know, we wanted to do this financial plan early. So we had an open house to invite residents to come in and to listen to them and to listen to what they had to say. There wasn't as many as we thought, but there was some, and there was the Chamber of Commerce rep that does represent all the businesses. But every single person here, the one comment that was resounding and that stood out with every single person was, do not do massive small business tax rate increases. They're fundamental, they're the heart of our community, and they are struggling. And if we do these big jumps to their tax rate increases, it could be the last straw. So the comments from everybody here, whether they were just employees or had no businesses or representing businesses, was please don't do big jumps in tax rates to businesses. So I think this is really supportive, and it kind of shows our intention that we want to keep services the same. You get what you pay for. Our infrastructure is aging. We need to do some increases. That's the reality. But we can also try as best as we can. This is one of the levers that we can pull. We don't have many in municipal government. This is one, but let's do it in a way that's kind of fair and even and consistent.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor Pickard. Councillor Fossin, did you want to speak, sir? Thank you.
Not at this time.
End of discussion. Everybody good? Call for the question. All in favor? Oh, sorry. My apologies. Oh, sorry. Oh, you think I'm trying to bypass you now? Counselor Waymire, sorry, I didn't see your hand, sir.
Yeah, so just looking this over quickly. So the only increases I'm seeing at this point are in years, what, 3, 4, 5, for an extra 2.9%. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think if you look at the numbers in 2007, 2008, 2009, you'd find yourself pretty close to getting to balanced budgets.
And then just the sanitary main renewal and the Mushlet Bridge sewer line replacement. And the sewer line replacement,
Those are
you,
more in another budget. That's in our, sorry, carry on. I interrupt you, carry on.
you say that it would cost 750K for the pipe replacement. And then have it destroyed when they replace the bridge. My understanding was 1 or 2 or 3 meetings ago that Modi was prepared to maintain that pipe if they were to replace the bridge, and that it wasn't in their next 10-year plan. And this is something that, it's getting to the end of its life. So I question why are taking that out of our budget if, it's something that needs to be done and Modi can work around it.
Thank you very much, Councilor Waymire. Again, my apologies for interrupting you, sir. When we get into the project budget, I'd like to speak to that. Right now, I'm just talking about the items that are in the operational. So I just want to address the operational at this point, but I'll give you a chance to return to that and restate your position on that. And when we get to that part of the discussion, if you still want to comment on it, is that okay with you, sir? Great. So any other discussion before we call for the motion that's on the table? And just to be clear, for the motion that's on the table is that it's been a move that we approve an 8.9% increase over the next 5 years in all categories. Councilor Winner.
So yeah, I guess on the question of the 125, we're looking at increasing our taxes 2.9, or well, it gets to the 8.9 instead of the 6% that it was going to be dropping to.
Right.
I feel like that's something or the next council would have to be doing anyway. And it just kind of feels like a bit of a cop out that we've lost $125,000 in revenue. And we're cutting where we can and everything. We've got our reserves in the negative. I think there needs to be some degree of hitting the business class and light industry for some degree. Not necessarily that 17.8%, but something like 13.4% over this 1 year. And, changing that multiplier and keeping it that way. And that way we've recovered at least 13.4% would be halfway between the 8.9 and the 17.8. And generate about $22,000 in extra revenue, mainly coming from Western Forest Products and the West Coast Marine Terminals. Because this deficit came from one place, and yes, it was short-sighted to not, find a way to maintain this, source of income. But it's what's before us. So, if we can get $22,000 back out of a $125,000 loss, I think that would go a long ways into all of our future budgets.
Thank you, Councilor Winner. Any other comments? Any other discussion? We'll call for the question that's on the table. If that's defeated, you can consider another one.
So can you say the motion again, please?
The motion that's currently on the table is that taxes be raised 8.9% overall classes for the 5-year financial plan. No further discussion. Call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Operating budget summary, that's the second item that I had on my list that I had emailed you, but I see that in the revised operating budget summary for 5 years that the Administrator Roy and Director of Operation Doxy have looked at that. They provided us with an updated operating budget summary, and if you look at expenditures, 60 Parks, Recreation and Culture, you can see that there's savings that they've been able to identify within that budget that are in addition to the 536,000 that they've already cut out of the budget from last year to this year. And it's approximately, varies a little bit, but it's kind of in that approximately 90,000, which helps bring our deficit down. And so I really appreciate the efforts that they put in to do that. I'm satisfied looking at what they've done there, that I don't have to make any motions or anything here on this item. I'm quite comfortable with the work that they've done so far. If you look at the previous document that the Director of Operation Doxy and Minister Roy provided us with the previous operating budget summary for 5 years, and you look at the revised one, you can see the savings that are present in each one of those years because of the reduction in the Parks, Recreation and Culture budget. So I don't need to make, I don't feel that I need to make a motion to give them direction to do it. They've already done it, so I'm satisfied with that. If we're going to accept this 5-year financial plan, I'm happy with what the work they've done on that, which would move me to so anybody else want to comment on that? Or is there any discussion? I'm very pleased with the work that they've done. Administrator Roy, thank you very much. Director of Operations, Doxy, thank you very much. And I'll just leave it for you gentlemen. Did you guys want to comment? Administrator Roy?
Just before you get out of the operating, the list of memberships that I did include, is council fine with all of those, or more clarity on that? So if that you're fine, then
The question is, do we want to finance those and still participate in those?
Yeah.
Did you need a motion?
just direction.
Show of
is
hands.
fine. Just
How many
looking-
people are happy with us continuing on with those associations and paying for our memberships and participating? I think you've got, were you in favor or opposed there, Councillor Boston?
In favor.
Okay,
Okay, so that means through 2025, when these come in, we'll just process them as they come through.
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I don't need to see them. One of the items that, and now we're gonna see if I can find that. There it is. The project summary. So that's the next item that I'd like to go to. And on my list on the project summary, I know one of the things that was of particular interest to councillors was the public works vehicle replacement. It's on one line, it's 31-001 public works vehicle replacement. There was 130,000 budgeted for that. I see in 2025, 88 in 2026, 250 in 2027, and 140 in 2028, 250 in 2029. That was a 5-year financial plan. So that was our projected summary for the 5 years. We've asked the staff to take a look at that. They have looked at it and they provided us with an update, which includes some alternative proposals that I'd like council to consider. So, and just to have some discussion on that, I know that we had some conversations last time, and like you can see if you look, I believe that if you guys have got this was the Director of Operations Doxy provided us with this document, which is a revised 5-year financial plan, which lays out every single thing and what year it is and the description of what it is. So this is for the equipment replacement part in that project summary for, you got it down as 10 years, but it's 5 years, right?
That's correct. It's actually a canned report in our budgeting software that does a 10-year window, but we don't have 6 to 10, so.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if
I
it's a
forgot to
typo.
change the 10 to a 5. when I
Thank you, sir.
downloaded it.
I'm sure that's what it was, but I just wanted to inquire. So anyways, if you haven't seen this, I can pass this around. It's kind of pretty small. I've read it, but it is helpful. And what it is that I believe Director of Operations, Doxy, as well as Administrator Roy have revisited it and provided us with the initial proposal that they had, that we had questions about. And they've also provided us with a alternate schedule for us to consider, which basically extends the life on a number of pieces of equipment that they're pretty well at the end of life, but they feel that with the maintenance that they've done on it and the way the usage that it's got on it in terms of mileage or hours, that they could probably extend the life on these. So they propose a number of alternative suggestions there. And on the sheet that I gave you, I wrote them out because this was way too small for me to even read, even with my glasses on. But if anybody wants to read this, they're welcome. But essentially what I seen in the alternate proposals is that unit number 12 will be moved from 2025 to 2028. They believe they could get about 3 more years of that. And I think that was a question that Councillor Fawson had for us during that last discussion. We wouldn't be buy 2 units in 2025, we buy 1 and we try and get 1 to last longer. I think that addresses that question that Councillor Fawson had. Our case loader vehicle 2 would be moved from 2027 to 2030. 3 more years. The mechanic feels that there's, and Director of Operations feels that because of the work that they've done on it and the amount of hours it has on it and the amount of kilometers we could possibly get to 2030. The Kubota motor, I see that on there, it's moved from 2026 to 2029. And I had a chance to go down and take a look at the flat deck trailer. And I agree that I don't think that trailer is going to make it to 2025 actually, but it's gone 2029 to 2026. And I'm prepared to support the alternative proposals for the equipment in the 5-year summary, because I like the fact that it's addressed. I'm getting longer life out of our pieces of equipment and allowing us to go a little bit farther before we have to draw into our reserves. And like I said, is that this isn't in stone. If Director of Operations, Doxy, and the mechanic and Roy say that, we tried it, but it died, then we're just gonna have to revisit it and look at make a decision on it based on the reality. But I do like the work that they've done. We've sent it back to them. We gave them a challenge and they responded to that challenge. And I like the alternate proposals. I'm prepared to support them. So my motion was to move that the project summary for 31-001 Public Works vehicle replacement with the proposed alterations be adopted. And you can see them, I'm not going to repeat them again. So somebody care to move it? Councillor Fawson? Second by Councillor Pringle, and discussion. Councillor Fawson.
Thank you through the chair. And I just wanted to say thank you to the staff for making the effort to go the extra mile on this when we asked them to, really look at the equipment that we have and try to really forecast how much longer we can get out of what we already have. It just goes to show that they care as well, as we know they do. But it just, they took the extra mile, in my opinion, to say, hey, we can work with what we got to help out the budget. So I just wanted to say thank you to the staff for that.
Thank you, Councillor Fawson. Councillor Pringle.
To the chair, Councillor Fawson, thank you. Those were my exact thoughts and words as well. I think this really shows how we're all in this together. And I would like to thank all of staff and Mr. Doxy for this really good report. And yeah, it just goes to show what a community can do when we get together and we can make things stretch and hopefully just, yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Councillor Fawson. Thanks, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Pickard, where you want to speak?
I echo Councillor Pringle, Councillor Fossin's words. Amazing report. It's really good to see the capital equipment vehicle replacement re-examined and see what can stretch. And Mayor Lot, thanks. I like what you wrote in your report too. We can always revisit the decision on these units if they can't go the distance, but we might as well try. And so thanks, Director Doxy and staff for putting it together and for just giving us the details of all the units and the vehicles. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor? The motion carried. Next item I have on my list, unless you guys want to jump in and add something from your list. Okay. 82-006 sanitary main renewal INI program under our project summary for 10 years. And our budget currently, we have 360,000 allocated for 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. If you recall the discussion that I had with Director of Operations Doxy during our last meeting when I was inquiring about that, he indicated that we were looking at doing sewer pipe repair to mitigate INI in our system. And he also indicated that there's lots of different ways in which we can approach that. Historically, what we've done in the village is we've taken a different approach in dealing with our sewer line repairs and our INI infiltration. And it's a much more surgical targeted approach than the open trench. Open trench is for summary is basically you're going into the neighborhood, you're tearing everything up, streets are coming up, sidewalks are coming up, curbs are coming up, you're digging, you're pulling up your pipes and you're replacing them and trying not to take out other utilities that might be ground utilities. And in situ form, it's a camera approach. You run a camera through your existing pipes. And if you see any deficiencies there, cracks, breaks, anything, then what you do is you focus on that and then you run a lining process through the pipe, in the pipe, and that you run it actually in the pipe. So you don't, it's non-invasive. You don't have to shut down roads and dig stuff up and stuff. And it's much more economical. However, what it does, it operates on the principle that you repair the problem, the specific problem in the pipe, you don't replace the whole pipe. So even though you repaired the damage in the pipe, you still have a conceivably 25, what are we, 25? We're built in 65, 35, 60-year-old pipe that may last, depending what type of pipe it is, what type of environment it is, how it's been handled, could last up to about 100 years. So it's a much more affordable approach. And based on the fact that we want to make our dollar go farther, if we went with, we stick with the traditional process that we've done historically in the village, that's more like $65,000 a year approximately to address the different areas as you move through the community, as opposed to what we're looking at for the open trench. And I know that this is gas money or community works funds, but that's 1.2 million in community works fund that we could allocate to something else. And that might be what covers the cost of the McQuina lift or the industrial lift or the well number one, instead of coming out of our reserves, which are depleting. So it's just another way of thinking about it. It's an opportunity that's available to us if we want to look at it. If we want to do open trench, if we want to replace a whole section of want to do dogwood and go do dogwood and tear it all up and replace all the pipe in there, you can, or you can just go through and camera it and repair the parts of the pipe that may be infiltrating. So anyways, I want to use that $1.2 million for the other projects or something else. So that's why I'm proposing the motion that I had here. So I'll make it and we'll see if we can get it moved and seconded. But basically, I want to move that 65,000 for camera and in situ form sanitary may renew be approved for the 2005, 2009 years. There's 5 years there. And that the 360 open trench proposed for years 2005, 2008 be removed from the 5-year for their 10-year project summary. When you care to move that, Counselor Pringle, or excuse me, Counselor Pickard, Counselor Pringle, discussion. And we have Director Operations Doxy here, and so if you wanted to, you could probably address your questions to him too.
You had her hand up.
Counselor Pickard. It's getting tired, is it?
There's a tie, but thank you, Counselor Fawson. And thank you for your comments, Mayor Lott. And, you know, this is a pretty big budget item, the 1.2 million for the open trench proposed. And I hear a little bit about the plumbing and the pipes at home, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't feel like I'm in a position to make this decision right now. I know you gave us a bit of a background of the I&I and flow and infiltration and the camera system. And in theory, it sounds better than digging it all up. And it sounds great to save some money, but I don't think sitting here just with this information, I feel like I'm in a position to make the call or cut the open trench or decide just strictly on the I&I. And it is a major decision for the community. And I know Mr. Doxy, Director Doxy's online, so I don't know if you'd be able to kind of weigh in here, or if maybe we could request a report.
Why don't you ask him a question?
Yeah, Director Doxy, just if you're following, just Mayor Lott suggested that we scrap the 360,000 open trench proposed for years 2025 to 2028 annually, and just focus on the in situ form camera action. And I was just wondering if you have information now, or maybe wanted to provide us with some guidance, if that would be still adequate and still take care of what we need to in the pipes. Thanks.
Director of Operations
Sure.
Doxy, you're still with us, sir?
Yes, yes, sir. If I may, through your worship.
Thank you.
So the type of repair is something that is really difficult to say what is the optimal method at the point of a budget meeting. It would be something that when we get into the physical design for each year, we're going to have a different leg of pipe that we think that we need to renew or replace. And each year we would want to do a very fresh video camera of that line. Things like in situ form, that's a brand name. We call it like cast in place plastic pipe, a CIPP. That's something that would be a very preferred method of renewal each year, particularly when we're not driven by hydraulic capacity. Our system is generally designed for a larger population volume, and we're not there. And so we do have hydraulic room to thicken the walls of the pipe by doing things like cast in place pipe replacements. And so where those don't work is if there's vertical, if the pipe slope or profile, as we call it, vertically is messed up or has sags and valleys and rises, then it doesn't work so well. And then you have to either do spot replacements and spot repairs or whole pipe replacement. But if you don't have a terrible slope or profile, as we call it, slip lining, cast in place pipe placement it's definitely the preferred method. It's just that it's too hard to say that it could be A or B at the point of a budget meeting.
Good, Counselor Pickard. Any other questions to Director of Operations Doxy? Counselor Pawson.
Thank you to the chair, and thank you, Councillor Pickard, for your question, because you asked the same question I was just going to ask. So thank you.
Counselor Waymar.
Through the chair, are there any areas in town that would benefit from open trench? Because I mean, if slope's an issue, then I could think of areas. But is there any particular area in town that would benefit from a open trench versus the camera and in situ form?
If I may, again, through your worship, there's actually nothing that is immediately like an open cut like demand situation. Like cast in place pipe would be our first and foremost approach to just about any leg of pipe that we replace or renew.
Satisfactory, Councillor Weimer. Any other questions that you'd like to direct to Director of Operations, Doxy? Any other discussion? Councillor Fawson?
Thank you, through the chair. I do have a couple of questions, but not on this topic.
Okay, still. We exhausted the discussion. Councillor Pickard?
Thank you to the chair. And thanks, Councillor Waymire. And since we have you on the call, Director Doxy, so if we're making a budget decision here and the recommended or the motion on the table is to remove the budget for open trench proposed for 2025 to 28, would you, given your experience and your knowledge of the systems here and your teams, feel comfortable with that and recommend that also?
It's it's
That
hard for
puts you on
me.
the spot, huh?
Yeah, sorry if I'm answering your worship. I'm actually struggling to find where I differentiated so much on the method of repairs. So it's more so that we have renewals coming as a matter of fact, whether they be by trenchless or they be by open cut. I'm not recalling specifically where we had earmarked open cut excavation or trench replacement versus CIPP or cast in place pipe replacement. But usually I would tend to budget somewhere in like at the safe side, meaning like enough money to do an excavation and replacement, and then when a CIPP project is available, then we save 30% or 40% or whatever it is.
Just, can I just address one thing before I hand it over to you, Mr. Roy? Director of Operations, Oxley, if there was a situation that required open trench repair of our pipe, a significant section of it, and it wasn't, and we weren't able to replace it by the situating process, that money is still going to be in our fund for the Community Works Fund, and we could anytime revisit that and reallocate those funds. So if you found that there was a situation that presented itself that wouldn't be appropriate for the type of repairs we're talking about through in situ forming, you can still bring it to our attention through obviously through the CAO, and the CAO would let us, we'd have to revisit the budget, alter it in order to allocate the funds to make sure the job was done, but it could still be done. We could still pull it out of community work funds. Mr. Roy.
I think what Director Doxy was trying to get at is this was as a project on I&I, and any repair or replacement we do would be by the most cost-effective method. This is just setting the ceiling on how much we may invest in a given year. That does not guarantee we would use the 300 and some thousand. We may end up looking at it and he says, "Oh, I only need to spend 50,000 on what we've identified this year." This just sets the really it's just setting the upper threshold, but staff would always be looking at the most cost-effective method, whether it's open trench or in situ or whatever. He didn't really indicate in his proposal that it was one method or another. It was just a program that we would be doing to look at and renew our sewer lines.
And I really appreciate your comments. Thank you, Director of Operations Oxley and Administrator Roy. It just reinforces what I think we're saying right here is that we want to use the most efficient and effective method for doing the repairs possible. I believe that that's Cameron in situ form. However, I'm not monolithic. If there's a job that requires open trench and we have to replace a certain piece of section of pipe in a big area, then I'll go back and we revisit that, and council would just reopen the budget and we would allocate the funds out of the community works funds in order to get the work done. So I guess a different approach. I want to see the $65,000 listed on the budget rather than the 360. And if we need the 360, then come and talk to us. We'll give you the 360 because we're not going to leave a sewer line completely destroyed. So one approach is put 360 in there, spend 65. The other one is spend 65, and not have the 360 in there, but have it in the bank. If we need to use it, we draw on it. So I think we, basically same thing, just two different ways of presenting it or dealing with it in the budget. And like I said, is that I'd like to see those funds go towards other things that might be coming out of our depleted sewer reserve fund. And I see that we got projects there like McQuina lift needs to be replaced, industrial lift needs to be replaced. We need to do work and replace well number one. So all those are things that we could spend the money on and may not have to pull it out of the funds that are in that sewer reserve that are pretty well depleted. So that was my rationale behind it. I don't know if there's any other discussion that you guys want to have. Councillor Pringle?
I just would like to say, Mayor, thank you. This is your background in what you did before you were mayor is really helping us out to make these good decisions. And I would never have known any of these. And I would just like to thank you for digging down on these. And I'd like to thank staff and Director Doxy and CAO Roy also, because I think this is good stewardship for us all. And I really, really like to thank you for digging down and bringing it all to our attention.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we're very fortunate to have Director of Operations Doxy and our Administrator Roy. Like, I think the comment I heard is that it's more than a job. It's these people are invested and they care. And you know what? I'll take heart over talent anytime, but we are lucky we got heart and talent. Because you can usually, you can develop talent, but you can't change attitude. And anyways, I don't know how we got there, but Councillor Pickard.
Thank you for your wisdom, Mayor Lott, and for your comments, Councillor Pringle. And so just kind of based on all the talk about the different ways for the renewal and the budgets, do we think that it might be wise to put like the upper threshold is there, but some budget in for the open trench proposal? No, given the
It's
state
in
of
our
our
bank-
pipes?
It's in our bank account, Councillor Pickard. You can pull it out anytime you want. Not going anywhere. Any other discussion? Exhausted, call for the question. Oh, nearly snuck it in. Just Councillor Rimmer.
I guess another question through the chair. Is there is there a open trench proposed in the future, or is staff kind of going, as needed with these numbers?
If I may, again, through your worship, I think where you're seeing the differences between the 67 and the 300 and some change budgets might, I don't have the capital in front of me, but it might actually be the design and the construction end, not so much the in situ form or CIPP versus open cut. So most of all of the projects, in fact, on the utility side, what we have done is like year one would be like a design and engineering project fund, and then the second year would be construction implementation, and then alongside construction and implementation, the second year would be design for the next year. So there's always a little bit of design for the following year, and then there's the construction and implementation. So like year one probably looks like the smaller number, and that's where probably the confusion between CIPP versus open cut traditional removal replacement is coming from. I think it's probably design engineering year one, and then construction implementation year two. And then construction implementation as part of the design, we're always going to look for the most practical way to replace the material. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Director of Operations. Oxy, any subsequent questions, Councillor Rimmer?
Less a question, more of a comment. I'm not necessarily ready to pull out all of this money from our budget. We've got future budget meetings coming. And I'd kind of like to, delve down into this a bit more and see some sort of a degree of a report, because I love pulling $1 million out.
1.2.
$1.2 million out for sure. But at the same time, I don't want to, I mean, pull it out if it's gonna handcuff our staff, especially with our aging infrastructure. I mean, we can Band-Aid as much as we can, but I mean, if what's already in the budget is going to be more beneficial for Gold River, then I'd at least like to confirm that with a report or not, or whatever we might glean from said report.
Thank you, Councilor Rimmer.
Um,
CAO,
Your worship,
yes, sir.
I think we're kind of getting into the weeds. We're getting into the how of things instead of saying, what is the comfort level of how much of investment we want to put back into our system? We're getting into discussion, should we do an open cut or the other, then really that's an operational thing we'll look at as we do it, and we would look at the most cost effective way of doing it. The real question is, how much of an investment do we want to put in on an annual basis? What we have in there right now is 360,000. We already do have camera work in our operating budget already. This is over and above camera work. So I think that's really the question. We're trying to get too far down into how it's going to be done, which is staff will take care of and look at it and find what is the most cost effective way to get it so that we get the best bang for our dollar. So maybe if we can just bring it back to maybe what is our comfort level for an investment on an annual basis for the next few years.
Councilor Pickard.
Thank you through the chair, and thanks for that clarification, Administrator Roy, and pulling us out of how the pipes are gonna get fixed, because we have really talented staff and employees that worry about that. So thank you to them. And as much as I appreciate Mayor Lott trying to trim down budget, I also agree with Councillor Waymeyer that I don't feel comfortable to trim a 1.2 million budget upper threshold for the open trench possibility, just with the aging infrastructure and knowing that it, these things come up and arise. So without having any more kind of recommendations or reports, I feel that maybe we should consider some budget in there. Thanks.
Any other discussion?
And just bear in mind, a lot of times we won't know until we actually physically go and look at that pipe. So even trying to generate a report to get to a point where we can make a budget decision in the next month or two is not necessarily realistic, because we'd have to do the investment and the time to do the work to see what it looks like. And that would be the pre-part that Director Doxey was talking about,
Thank
the
you.
assessments that would be needed.
Terrific. Councilor Waymer.
I guess this comes down to trust in staff here, and I want to give them the money that they need. And if they're not going to spend it because it's not worthwhile, then great. But I don't want to handcuff them and have them have to come back to council because a pipe is exploded and they need more than $65,000 to make their major repairs. So I am happy to keep this number as it is. And, I trust our staff is going to make the choices necessary for Gold River on the cheapest possible way. And it's going to be a lot. I don't want to handcuff them by saying, hey, actually, we've just trimmed this down by, 600%.
Thank you, Councilor Waymer. An operational question, Director of Operations Doxey. In the event that you do have a pipe failure like you did at the, down at the high school or the bottom of Eagle and Nimkish there, you're already set up to do point repairs on damaged pipe, correct, sir?
That's
Your
correct.
existing operational budget.
That's correct.
Yeah, so part of our operations and in our operating budget is equipment, labor, parts to repair any pipe that may be damaged in our community, regardless of a sewer, water, or storm. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And what, Mr. Ray, how much money do we have in our community works fund? Because we're getting about, and how much do we get every year?
1.5, and I believe the new numbers is around a 120. You'd have to pull it up on the website, but I think it's about 120.
Okay, another question I have is that the items that I'm seeing in the budget, just for my understanding is that the two sewer projects that we're talking about, the replacement of the Quina lift and replacement of industrial lift, as well as the replacement of well number one. Are they coming, are they being funded out of our reserves or out of the Community Works Fund?
I can't remember. Michael, Roy, do you have that in front of you?
Right now, we're projecting, trying to use grant funds for some of the lift station work. What I have on the screen in front of you is the funding for that this time. But again, as we get closer to actually having to do those projects, there may be other funding sources that may be available that we would go after. in
Yeah, we could
addition.
apply for facilities
Yeah.
grants also, but just I'm dealing with the known rather than the possibility. So, right, if we're using our community works funds to finance those projects for the two sewer and the water, out of that, then that takes the pressure off of the sewer reserve fund and the water reserve fund. And it still leaves money available to do open trench if there's any areas that you find that you might have to do open trench that wouldn't be suitable for an in situ forming report or in situ pouring and repair. Correct? Am I on the right track? Director of Operations, Doxy?
Yes, I think so. I think the main issue or potential conundrum is that difference between open trench renewal replacement versus the CIPP. It's basically budgeted at a conservative point where we would have the option to do A or B and not so much A or C or B.
So I just want to kind of conclude my thoughts, if I may, is that what we're talking about is how much we want to invest in making sure that we have sewer line replacement and mitigating I&I. There's lots of opportunities and there's a spectrum of approaches that communities can use. You can use the more of affordable approach like what I'm proposing here, or you could use a more expensive approach initially in capital, but probably in long term, it probably work out to be cheaper because you're buying a lot more pipe life. But this is just a matter of a community making a determination on what technique and what approach and how much they want to invest in in servicing their sewer pipes and dealing with the I&I. And what I'm kind of thinking is that's what the decision is here. And from what I'm seeing with the finances is that if you do have an area and you haven't identified any specific area, that wouldn't be suitable for in situ forming repair. But if you did find an area, we could also revisit the budget and take the money out of the Community Works Fund or out of the reserve fund, I guess, if we had to finance anything that happened. So we wouldn't be restricting you at all, but if you needed it for that degree of repair, then we could also revisit the budget and we could pull that money out of there and allocate it for that function. So
I think.
I guess what it is a matter of what the community, how much the community wants to spend on the function. So I'd rather have a vote on it tonight. And if it's defeated, it's defeated. Councillor Pickard.
Thank you for the chair. Thanks for your thoughts. And this might be a question for Director Doxy, but maybe Administrator Roy. And since our fortes aren't deciding what the best way to repair the pipes are, and we have experts and professionals and great employees that do that we trust and have done a great job in the past. Can't we just do this in one kind of a lump sum budget item, sanitary main renewal I&I program, and then we leave it up to the experts to decide what it is? Do we have to separate camera and open trench, or can't we just do I&I, you guys decide what's the best, this is our threshold, thank you for taking care of our pipes? Well,
That's just right. Basically how the project is set up. It's just setting the dollar value that we would invest in doing to arrive at some sewer line renewal.
Yeah.
Councillor Pickard.
Thank you, Administrator Roy. And so this dollar value that our staff and you've come up with has to be based on something, you know, it's not just arbitrary. So I don't think we can just delete the 360,000 that our staff and the Director of Operations and the team has given to us in a budget for a really important item as our main.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Any other discussion? I think that was a pretty good discussion. I think that was wholesome and full. I think we all understand the issues that are on the table now. It's just a matter of determination of how the community wants to move forward. There's a motion on the table. If we defeat it, it's defeated. We can have an alternate proposal or an alternate motion that can come on. But I'd like to vote on this because I think this is a reasonable approach to dealing with this, and I don't have any problems with it myself. I think it's a preferred method approach to dealing with it. So any other discussion? Nope. Call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Noting that Councillor Waymire and Councillor Pickard are opposed. On to the next item. This is the one that Councillor Waymire had addressed. They're the ones that, and I was wondering, Director of Operations, would you be able to speak to this project? It's the Mushlet Bridge sewer line replacement and the Mushlet Bridge water line replacement. I'm not sure if you probably you remember our comments from the last meeting when I wanted to get more clarification on exactly when Modi was planning on replacing those bridges, because my concern was we would be investing $750,000 into a bridge and then having into new pipes on the bridge, and then Modi coming 11 years later and demolishing that bridge and demolishing the pipes that we just paid for 10 years ago, 750,000. And then they build a new bridge and we have to spend another $1 million to put those pipes back in again, which should last, you know, anywhere up to 100 years. So the question I wanted to know is that when we've discussed this with Modi, the regional managers, they have their capital potential. I'll get it out. It's getting late. Tangible capital assets program. They'll know when they're replacing it, whether it's 15 years from now, 20 years, never, who knows? But they'll have a date in their planning process, and they'll have a policy which determines whether or not they would actually pay to replace those pipes that they'll destroy when they demolish the bridges and rebuild them. So I don't want to spend $750,000 for pipes going across the bridge, and then 11 years later having to spend $1 million to replace those pipes because they rebuilt the bridges. That's what I'm concerned about. And I don't have those answers, and I was wondering if you do.
If I may, through your worship, I don't have all of the answers. I understand that some of the communication has taken place between Modi, or the Modi regional rep, and administration prior. I haven't had a chance to reach out to Modi. My understanding is that bridge is kind of in the 15 to 25 year replacement plan, and that we were given instruction to go ahead and do what we have to do to renew our assets. I can say that I have been on the reciprocal side, where I have in another community worked on a 4.5 meter culvert replacement, which is effectively a very small bridge from a design standard point of view, and we had to deal with large 8-inch Fortis and a private regional district water line on our structure, and bracing is not particularly. I guess it depends how you want to phrase it. It can be difficult, but it's routinely done. It cost in the single digits, thousands of dollars, and it's done all the time. And that was the instruction that we were given, per my understanding from the last contact with the Ministry of Transportation, was that go ahead, replace your assets, do what you have to do. And when they renew the bridge, they would do what they have to do to maintain our asset on that bridge.
So the answer is no, you don't know. We don't know when they're planning to replace that bridge, nor do we know whether we have a guarantee from them that they will replace the pipe that we put in there. if we do it next, but then I think. you're
Correct.
looking at
We don't
the
have a
planning-
precise
planning
timeline.
Next year and then putting it in 2026, but we don't have any agreement with them that says that they will honor the fact that we put in new pipe there and that they will replace it if they destroy it, which they will, I'm pretty sure, when they demolish the bridge. We don't have any of that, do we?
It's not in a written agreement or anything like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be prepared to support a proposal to go forward with study next year or replacement of that pipe until I was assured that that we knew exactly when that bridge was being replaced, and we knew that they were going to pay for the replacement of the pipes that they damaged when they decommissioned that bridge. That's a question that's my concern. Counselors, Counselor Pringle.
To the chair, so can we find this out before December 9th?
Would you care to respond to that, Director of Operations, Doxy?
We can try to find out before December 9th. Realistically, if we can't get an agreement from the ministry between now and December 9th, it would be something that we would take on during the scope of the design of the project. So to have some sort of an agreement or statement from the ministry before we actually go and construct.
I'd even be open to moving it back a year just to give you guys time to work on it. And instead of 2005 being your planning year, make 2006 your planning year and 2007 your pipe replacement year. If you could assure me that those two things, that we knew when the bridge was being decommissioned and knew that we had an agreement in place with Modi that says that they would pay for the replacement of that pipe. Other than that, I'm not really keen on replacing a pipe and having it demolished in a short period of time and paying for it again. If we can maintain that pipe like we're maintaining the other pipes in our community, that's what, 25 and 45. A lot of our pipe in our community is 70 years old, isn't it? So, yeah. So anyways, that's my concern. I wouldn't have any problem even tonight just moving that back a year. If you guys don't have any opposition to that, then we can wrap this up. We can say that we could probably vote on giving you guys the budget at that point. Everything, my concerns would be taken care of. Or we can have a meeting on the 9th, and if you think that you can get that information by that time, I would be very skeptical that you'd get that information in that amount of time. But yeah, would you be open to having this adjusted so it moved back a year rather than removed completely from the budget? Give you time to work on it?
If I may, again, through your worship, I think moving it back a year would probably be more feasible than trying to get a resolution with Modi between now and December 9th.
I agree with you totally.
probably
I don't
have to
think
go
you
up
have
the
a hope
chain.
in hell of getting that, but I thought I'd give you a chance. So I'd be prepared to revise the motion that I'm going to put forward to the council saying that, you know, I support having this in the budget, but move back a year so that your planning would be in 2026 and the planning money in 2026 and the actual job in 2027. And then we can revisit it next year and see whether or not you guys have confidence that, you know, that we have those things in place. So are you comfortable with that, Director of Operations, Doxy?
Yes, yeah, that sounds good.
That's what I'm moving. Can I get somebody to? Okay, Councillor Foster, Councillor Pringle, any discussion? No discussion, call for the question, all in favor? Done. I don't have any other things on my list, you guys, other than a few questions for the administrator, but I'm kind of monopolizing things. So if you folks have any other questions that you want to address to Director of Operations or our CAO, I'd give you guys some space. Councillor Foster.
Thank you through the chair. I do have a question for our administrator. It is in regards to Department 30. We have expenses, Public Works, 31,310, 32,310, Public Works, Transportation, Roads, Transportation. My question is does any of the gas tax fund help with this cost of repairing or repairing of the roads within Gold River?
Yes, there is actually some of the funds is going towards the curb and road surface.
Okay, thank you. And then my secondary question is for the Director of Operations. Director of Operations, Doxy. Question for you, sir. Have you your staff been able to do an assessment of some of the conditions of our roads within Gold River that are in necessary need of repair within 2025, 2026?
If I may, again, through your worship, there's no condition assessments that have been done recent to date. I believe the last condition assessments were done in 2016-17.
Okay, thank you. And okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Boston? Any other, I have a couple of questions. I don't, and I direct them, I'll just come to the director, Director of Operations or CEO. Is that the Kenuma, the Kenuma development we've been looking at? Is there certain monies within the budget that I'm not aware of that's been allocated for any of the costs that we're going to have if we want to move forward with that, I guess, request for proposals or anything else in 2025? Mr. Roy, do we have any plans or anything budgeted?
Yes, your worship, I did place 100,000 into the budget, which would be funded from the Growing Communities Fund,
Excellent.
and that's on the operating side, and it is in the budget.
Thank you, sir. I just, I look at all your numbers and I'm not I'm not an accountant, and boy, it's hard for me sometimes to dissociate, attach the numbers to the function. So thank you very much for clarifying that for me. Yeah, and just another question on our wharf. I see that you've got money again in the wharf. Could you tell me what the money is allocated for? I'm trying to remember off the top of the head. I think it was 113,000, something like that. I know you were going to do some repairs on the concrete surface on the deck there, plus where the holes were in there. But I was wondering, is there something else has that been budgeted for? I think it's about 113,000. Am I pretty close there, Mr. Roy?
There were a few things I believe that were being done in there, Director Doxy. I believe you were also saying it's time to do our 5-year cycle of an assessment, condition assessment.
Yes, so there's some surface repairs. There's also additional surface inspection and a periodic crack inspection that needs to be done. And then there's a subsurface inspection on the piles that go into the below the seafloor. So they have to be done by a dive inspection team and then reviewed by an engineer. And so that's a fairly significant expense that has to be done. I believe the recommendation is every 5 years.
Excellent. Pleased to hear that. I thought it was something like that, but I wasn't too sure because a lot of the numbers come in as a number without a breakdown. So it's, I appreciate you guys, yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? Clarifying that for me. Yeah. And, I do have a couple other questions, but I think I'll just defer them until and let somebody else talk. Ricky, I feel like I'm doing too much talking here tonight. Anybody else have any questions for the administrator or Director of Operations? Nope. The other questions I have are kind of staff related, and I don't know if this is appropriate to be doing in this environment. It might be an in-camera item having to do with some staffing items, and yeah, I prefer, I think, to do that in camera. Mr. I'll consult with you and you can tell me, but I won't do it here because I'm not sure. So I'll leave that. Anything else? No. Well, I'll wrap it up. I'll just, I didn't believe in my wildest dreams or expectations that my staff would be able and my council would be able to deliver a full budget by November the 26th, 2024 for 2025. This will be the first time, I think, in the history of Gold River that our staff and our administration gets a full year to do their work instead of 8 months, which they usually get, because we usually give them their money in May. Here, they have their money November the 26th, if you guys want to approve it. And I'm, from the work I've seen that they've done, Just amazing work, absolutely amazing work for the citizens of our community, our taxpayers, our employees themselves. It's just, I never thought that we would be able to get our $800,000 operating deficit down to where we are right now, be able to hand a budget over to the next council in a few years. That's going to be pretty well balanced, to be able to do it in a way that all of us would agree to do it. And so it's just a remarkable achievement. So I thank you, Administrator Roy. I know I was a bit skeptical, but you've proven me wrong, and I'm glad to be proven wrong. And I really appreciate all the work that you and your staff and everybody else has put in. I don't know who all contributes to this, but you can thank them on my behalf and the council's behalf, because this amazing body of work in such a short period of time. And like we've heard from our consultant, is that we don't have 5 people working on this. We have 1 person working on this on the side of his desk. So, yeah, at this point, I think we do have a motion on the table right now, this somewhere. The administrator's report for 2025 year financial plan. I've moved that we accept that with revisions that we've done for this evening. And is that appropriate, Administrator Roy, to get you?
Yes, then we get moved,
Because I'm
direct
ready-
the rise up to the regular council meeting with the financial plan bylaw.
Okay, because I'm prepared to approve this and to vote on it this evening, and then you'll give us, or do you want to wait until that meeting and then we do it in?
What you would be doing then is giving me direction to proceed with the drafting of the financial plan bylaw to come back to a regular council meeting for approval and adoption.
Terrific. That's the motion. Who would care to move it? Councillor Fawson, second by Councillor Pringle. Any discussion? Hearing none. Call for question. All in favor? Well done, everybody. Really impressed. Give yourself a round of applause, man, because I don't think the village of Gold River has ever done this. Thank you very much. Sweet. I guess I have to actually go through everything because we're actually in a real meeting. Huh? Can't get away with that other one. Yeah, so reports from council, none. Information items, none. And reports from committees, none. Bylaws, none. Correspondence, none. Question period. Nobody in the gallery. Anybody online? Thank you. New business, none. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Waymire, second Councillor Pringle. All in favor? Carried unanimously. We are done. Thank you.